Hello and a very, very warm welcome to this, our monthly webinar for World Vision United on the 24th of September 2020. I thought I'd confuse you today by starting the webinar with my sound on. I'm getting a little echo, so I'm going to just try and figure that out in a moment, but I hope you'll bear with me in the meantime. If you've watched the previous webinars, you'll know that we are now approaching the launch of United 4 with our first cohort of live sites. Really excited about that. And I'm really pleased to be able to say that despite all this disruption caused by COVID this year, the team's just worked incredibly well as a distributed team, and we do remain on schedule to deliver that first cohort of websites on the new platform over the coming quarter as we plan to do. So super pleased about that. I think I figured out where the echo is coming from. That's sorted it out. As we speak, the team are preparing the final technical features, ready to get the release of the platform out. So in parallel with that, the team of editors and marketers are preparing to get the core content together, and that's coming together really nicely, and you'll see perhaps a little bit of that today. And that obviously all gets delivered as part of the core United platform. I'm really looking forward to being able to do a full demo of that for you and give you a full kind of a full look around the platform, as well as kind of opening it up for you to take a peek around very soon, as well as announcing our launch schedule. And if we stay on track, then we will be ready to do that at our next webinar at the end of October. I say if we stay on track because the UK has just entered a higher state of restrictions around COVID, and I think many of us are thinking that if we have to have our children home and homeschool them again, that we may see some disruption, but I'm hoping that won't impact our schedules as it hasn't so far. But I really hope you can join me for that. But what we're going to do today is take a sneak peek at some of the key features of the platform, just to give you a taste of what's coming. And we're going to highlight some of the core technology and key integrations that we've now built into the platform, just so you can see what's going on behind the scenes. We'll also take your questions, of course, and so you'll be able to post those in the chat. Do make sure you're logged into to your Google account as you watch this on YouTube in order to do that. And do take a moment to say hi so we know who's on. I see there's quite a few people joining at the moment, so very warm welcome to everybody. And a very warm welcome to those who I know aren't able to join at this time, but will grab us a little bit later on the on-demand version. But first of all, we're going to take a look at the design system which we've been using to put together the whole platform. This is something we've touched on just briefly in one of our earlier webinars, but over recent months we've done an awful lot of work on it, and it's really foundational in how we're putting together outstanding supporter experiences, and it really helps to understand how the whole platform kind of hangs together. So to take us through all of that, I'd like to hand over to my friend and yours, our digital product owner, Helmut Lindell. Welcome, Helmut.
Of what we're building here in terms of design. So let me just share my screen with you. Should be able to see a design tool called Figma now. And this is where we have a design system that's easily shareable. So it's always published as a Figma link. And it's versionized, so you can always see the current version that we're using here. And we're actually using 3 different concepts here. So the first concept is called atomic design, which is not a new thing. It's used by many of the major digital leaders, and it actually has 3 different components. They're called atoms, molecules, and organisms. And the idea is that all things we do in our design system are derived from just a couple of atoms, which are just some forms, some shapes, and so on. We have then some more molecules, which are put together from those atoms, and then some even more complex organisms. And from those, we can put together templates and then pages. And the idea is that we have lots and lots of different pages, but only a couple of atoms. And we can very frequently update pages and templates. We can quite often update organisms, not so often molecules, and very seldomly we want to update atoms. And of course, if we change one atom, those changes will trickle down to molecules, organisms, templates, and pages. So it's a very interactive way of building this. Second, and I think I talked about this in one of the previous webinars, we use material design, which is designed by Google or provided by Google as the design system baseline. And Google actually gives lots of very helpful tips about user flows, about usability, and about especially mobile use of a website or of a native app as well. So this actually helps us a lot in keeping what we do tied to best practice. And it actually helps our developers a lot as well, because all of those components already are documented in code by Google. So we don't need to come up with documentation and all this kind of stuff on our own. So we just had yesterday the case that we needed a circular progress bar, which actually just shows that we have progress. And it's already there out of the box by Material Design. We can just give it to our front-end developer, and she can run with it. And then lastly, a concept that we use is called full stack design system. So this means we have shared conceptual model and a shared language around things. So if we're talking about a progress bar, everybody knows what a progress bar is, and everybody thinks it's the same thing, from a BA to a front-end developer to a back-end developer to a designer. Then we have shared design resources, which I'm showing you right now. And for this, we also have shared code components. So each of the design resources actually relates to a code component. That means if we keep a lean design library, we also keep a lean component library in code as well, which limits the amount of code we have to maintain. So what this looks like in here is that we have lots of different atoms. We can just zoom in on some of the content atoms, which are the basic ones. So here we have, for example, this progress bar. They don't really make sense to you as a user, right? Because they're only the basic ones. We have for example, the video controls here. We can have a tab, which we can then reuse every time we want to use it. We can have a tag here, for example. Then this goes all the way to organisms, which are more complex shapes. So if we look at navigation, for example, we have the navigation bars, which already include all the potential stuff that we will have in the future. So if we have multiple languages per country, secondary items, a call to action in the navigation, multi-level navigation, and so on. So that's already in those basic components embedded, and then we can build it out as we go. But all of this comes back to the material design guidelines, the atomic design concept that we use, as well as the full stack design system that also includes code components, not only designs. And this we can actually share with anybody in the partnership. So all of these components can be shared as a library whenever other teams or different designers in our team want to make changes to different files. We can just load the latest components in, and we can just put this together like Lego bricks. So that's just a bit of an insight into the live version the design system and how we keep a lean base and a well-defined base for both our design components and our code components. Just stop here. Take over to you, Martin.
Fantastic. Thanks, Helmut. Really useful to understand. And I think one of the things that framework gives us is a real sense of both consistency and also a sense of lightness as you move through the platform and you go and do different things which maybe functionally might be quite different between sort of sending a message or processing a transaction. The fact that you're seeing the same visual elements being used, that the controls all work in the same way, brings such a sense of consistency to the platform that it really just takes a weight off when it comes to, you know, users who obviously are not like us. They only use the platform, once in a blue moon, and so we're getting some really good feedback from our early testing based around that kind of thing. So thanks for the update, Helmut. Really useful to see. I know that one of the other things that we're obviously really keen to do is to see the new platform in action. And there's obviously so much technical work going on at the moment. There's a lot of work going on, I know, around our payment systems. I was on our Scrum call earlier this morning, and we've I think got 3 payment systems on the go that are all going into the platform for the first cohort to support different financial processes that are needed in different countries. So lots to do there. That's all very behind the scenes, unfortunately, and not very exciting to look at. But I know one of the features that we are really keen to look at is the one that really strikes right to the heart of what we want our supporters to be able to do, which of course is to engage with a child somewhere else in the world and sponsor that child. And so I know, Helmut, you've got a little demo for us and you're able to show us this. What I really want you to show us is both the front end experience and how we've tried to keep that really lightweight and really easy to engage with, which is very much learning from all the feedback that we've had from previous websites. But also let's understand what's going on behind the scenes, because we've done this in a rather different way to the way that United 3 works and to the way that a lot of national sites currently interface with data from the field. So please do take us through, and very much looking forward to see this. Back to you, Helmut.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Martin. And I'm trying to get a live demo of the website on my phone here. So if I look down, that means I'm looking at my phone and try to start this. So let's see if this works out. That's a first for us as well. Just see. Doesn't look like I'm sharing my screen just yet. Just check. So it should work now. Cool. So you can now see a live version of our Sandbox website. So that's not available for editors yet, but is already in kind of a stable environment on my phone. I can just scroll down here, and one of the widgets that I want to show you is what we call the Registered Children widget. And that's just about to be done or to be finished and put live in the most basic version. So that's our baseline version, which it works from an architectural way in a bit different way than what we're used to so far. And from an architecture perspective, we have built this so that we already factored in the future stuff that we want supporters to be able to do. So for example, to see a subset of registered children by applying one or multiple filters, or loading the page with a subset of children, for example, so only girls on a campaign page centered around girls are shown, or for supporters to choose to sponsor a child without actually having to select one. So what you can see here in the front end is probably available on other websites as well around the partnership. But what's different is what's under the hood. So from a front end perspective, you can just scroll different children, you can swipe them, and now I can see that it doesn't seem to work anymore. Let me just check if I have to re-share my screen here. All right, so that doesn't work anymore. Sorry about that. But you could see a brief live view of this. And so my phone has kicked me out of the meeting here. But from an under the hood perspective, which is the more important thing here, we have established quite a lean setup that brings together data from the CMS, from the CRM, from RMT, and from Horizon. Obviously, the CMS determines on which page supporters see this widget and what it looks like. The CRM determines which registered children should be available to be sponsored here. So currently this works via file transfer, where backend supporters just have to upload a CSV. That's just a one column CSV. That's the leanest possible way to do that. However, in the future, we can do this as soon as CRM systems are ready to do this via API. We can do this via API in an automated way as well. So in that case, we can just push in a number of child IDs automatically, and those will be available on the website. So the data about the children, such as the image, the name, the gender, or the country, come directly from RMT and from Horizon. Once the child IDs are uploaded to World Vision United, we get the info about those children in near real time. So that comes via the API from those systems, from both RMT and Horizon. And this also means that we can refresh the data anytime we want. So let's say we want to, in the future, replace the image of a child with an autoplay video. We can just grab that directly from RMT, and we do not have to go through all the CRMs that we need to integrate with to get that data. In the long run, when we have a potential global CRM, and now I can share my screen again, just check. So here we go. And here now you can see what different data we have about the children. So we have the country name, the first name, the gender and age of the child, the amount of time that they have been waiting to be sponsored, all of this kind of stuff. And you can actually swipe on a mobile, and that's just the most basic experience here. And if I swipe to children that are not loaded yet, you might see that it's too fast. My internet is too fast. So they are actually lazy loaded in time while I'm swiping children here. So this is the most basic experience, of course, but in the long run, we can build in each point of complexity and can test it in market as we go. So in the long run, we can actually lose the CRM connection here entirely. So as soon as CRMs are connected to Horizon in real time, that means we can just get from Horizon all the available children in real time and just query them directly. However, even now, this already simplifies the setup considerably compared to past implementations, like for example, from World Vision United 3. And it lets us iterate the supporter experience a lot more frequently than we were used to. So this widget you will see out of the box from the start in World Vision United 4, but you will see quite a few iterations ready to be tested pretty soon after we start this out as well. So I hope you could see a little bit of the live demo on the phone, even though it crashed in the middle. And I'm happy for you to check it out as soon as we're live with it as well.
Fantastic. Really, really good to see that, Helmut. And I can see from the chat that some folks on the call are kind of appreciating what's going on there. We used to have some really clunky ways of getting data out of Horizon Systems, RMT, what we call in UK the diskette, these legacy systems, and getting them through to the website, and that process could take days or in some cases even weeks to happen. By bringing the data all together from the website directly from where it's coming from, it means that once Horizon has a child update, that update is immediately available to the website, and we're able to reflect changes in a child's status or show new children who are looking for a sponsor really, really quickly. So excited about that. And as you say, it's just part of the broader MarTech development across the organization as we're able to bring that kind of live data aspect to things like support office CRMs, and obviously they'll benefit from that speed as well. So yeah, really, really interested to see how this all unfolds. What it also means is it keeps our systems and particularly our data in United relatively light, because we're just pulling down the data we need. We're just pulling it down as we're needing it. And as Helmut was referring to with the lazy loading there, we're only sending it to supporters just when they need it. So if you load up that widget and you don't scroll, it doesn't have to load up the rest of the child images that you can't see, and therefore the page is so much faster than it would be on United 3 or another competitor website. So we're looking forward to seeing that all come together, and as we release the first versions of the platform, obviously speed testing and usability testing is absolutely at the heart of what we're going to be looking to do. So super excited about that, and from a user experience perspective, it's going to make a real difference. So really, really pleased to see that coming through. So that's really what we wanted to sort of talk about and demo with you today. So I do want to throw open, I see we've got a bunch of people on now, so do want to throw open for any questions that you've got coming through. And I know because of the lag of sort of us talking and YouTube and whatnot, that it'll take a few moments before we see those. So I've got a couple of questions that came through really just out of conversations. It's been a couple of months now since we had our last webinar. And there's been a few conversations where we've kind of detected the same question kind of coming back a few times. And so we really wanted to address those here. Some things we've talked a little bit about in the past, but really just to clarify those. And I think actually Helmut's just been showing us a demo there. And by the way, it was Zoom that crashed, not the website, just to be clear. My technologist's pride is at stake there. In terms of what Helmut was talking about there, he was saying you're seeing the most basic version of the tool, of the widget, and we've got lots of things coming through. Now, what this means is, because we're working in an agile approach, what it means is that we're doing releases every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks there's a new iteration of the platform, and new releases, new features become available. We're seeing, on our smallest releases where we've got lots going on behind the scenes, we're seeing half a dozen new user-facing features go out. On our bigger releases, we're seeing tens of new features go out every 2 weeks. So it's a real pickup in pace that we're able to work in that way. It's also a kind of a bit of a brain scramble, because it means that you're not working on a waterfall approach where you've got a long list and right, this is all going to be delivered at a certain time, and I know what's in and I know what's out. It means you have to keep track of, well, this is coming in sprint 35, and then that's coming in sprint 36, and then we're going to refine it in sprint 37, and then in sprint 38 we're going to see something else. So these features each exist through a sort of period of time, and the development takes place over that period of time. And so we've had a lot of questions along the lines of, why haven't you built feature X, or why haven't you built this thing that we need, because it's on the current site, it's working really well, we can't go live until we need it, or until it's delivered, but you haven't built it yet, why aren't you building it? And what we will sort of keep coming back to is, we have got it on the list to build, it's just that we haven't done it yet. So because we're releasing in each sprint, and each sprint is a new release, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the features in the backlog are going to get delivered, and our backlog is our big long list of all the things we want to build. It just means the next set are going to be delivered. And so I think where in the past we've had this idea of a binary, it's either happening or it's not happening, what we're having to get used to is the idea that there's a third state, which is, well, there are some things that are not happening, and there's some things that are happening because we just released them, and then there's also quite a lot of things at the moment that are not happening yet. But the important part of that isn't the not happening. The important part is the yet. So they're coming down the line. Please bear with us. Now, Helmut on the last webinar that we did took us through the product board tool, where he showed us how we can submit ideas and sort of see how those ideas are taken up, comment on other people's ideas. We're starting to shift towards that as we're building out the basic features. We'll be starting to actually pick up ideas and pieces of functionality and features selected from there, and we'll be picking those up and putting those into later releases. So that's where you'll see stuff coming through. And if you put something up and nothing happens with it for a couple of sprints, again, it doesn't mean it's not happening, it just means it's not happening yet. So please be patient, I guess, is the answer there. But of course, remember that previously your patience would have been, okay, we're going to see if it goes into our next major release in 6 months' time, and if it doesn't, you have to wait a year. Now, every 2 weeks, we're releasing a new set of features, so you're going to see things coming through much more quickly. Helmut, I think it probably would be useful if you could just talk us through very briefly. I know you covered this on an earlier webinar, but I think we've got a different group of people watching now, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit because I didn't sort of cue you up about this, but you previously talked a little bit about an idea that comes in. How do we go through those sort of 2 stages of sort of deciding whether to build it? How do we decide whether something goes in, and what happens when we find an idea that kind of looks good, but we're not sure about it? Because I think we've had some instances of folks thinking that because we haven't said, oh, it's definitely going into X, that maybe it's not been accepted, and of course that's not the case. So it'd be really useful if you could just briefly talk to that point for just a moment.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Let me just share my screen real quick. I'll do another live demo of what we have on product board. So this is what all of you guys can see under wvunited.org/product portal. So if I type in here, united.org, and maybe we can share that as well. Portal, you can actually see a link to this as well. So I think you have to click on another link and then you actually get there as well. So this is the view that you guys can see every time you want to see it. And this is publicly available for you guys. And what you can see here is for each of the components that we're building out, so the content component here, for example, and the transactions component here, all the ideas and hypotheses that we get and that we come up with on our own with as well. Always from a supporter perspective. So for example, I want to see a video of a child. That's what we talked about earlier, right? And then on the top here, you can see the different stages that each of those ideas go through. So we have the requested stage and under review, which means we have taken a look at it and it kind of makes sense to us and it's part of our backlog and it gets prioritized. And then announced means we will actually build it and it's coming up soon. And launch means we have tested this in market and it's working and we can actually release it to all the supporters. So what you can actually do here is give feedback to us about how important this is for you, because we want to factor your opinion in here as well. So you can say, oh, this is something that's important to me, or oh, this is something that's totally critical for me, or it's just nice to have. And you can give us some information about that as well. If you add your email address, we will get back to you on that as well. So that's how we can see, oh, this is actually something that's very important to lots of people in the partnership, or that's something that's just nice to have for most of our colleagues. But what's important here is what's happening under the hood. So let me just show you how I, as an admin, see the rest of those things. So I can see the features here. Again, you can see our components, content, transactions, notifications, and so on. And because Martin just talked about payment providers, maybe I can talk about payment a little bit as well. So you can see in our transaction baseline, we actually have a payment thing, like for example, something like pay with PayPal. So I, as a supporter, want to be able to use PayPal so I can donate. And then for us internally, we also have some documentation about what this means for editors, for you guys in the offices in the long run. And what we can see here is we can actually, based on the data we have about this, we can actually prioritize it as well. So we can say, how valid is this hypothesis? In this case, there are lots of external indicators that show that PayPal is a very important payment method in our markets. Most of the digital leader sites that we have looked at actually use PayPal. Not all of them, that's why it's not getting 5 stars here. I guess the main ones in Europe at least are direct debit and credit card, but it's still very important. And internal indicators we know from existing markets in WorldVision United 3 as well, as on other platforms, that lots of people donate via PayPal if we offer this as in the partnership. So we have both external indicator and external and internal indicators suggest quite strongly that this is a good idea to do this. And then from a value estimate, so how important this is for each of the supporters, we say that the impact, if I want to pay as a supporter with PayPal and PayPal is not available, this is going to set me off. Maybe I will still pay via credit card or so, but it will definitely be a smaller value for me if I'm determined to pay with PayPal. The volume of supporters that is not as large because it's not a content bid, which all of the traffic that we get to the website use, but it's more of an upper funnel thing. But it still applies to all of our donations. So not only child sponsorships, also the one-off donations, childhood rescue, and so on. So there's a fair volume of supporters which actually are impacted by this. And of course, the proximity to our revenue streams is very high because this is in the payment funnel. So if people drop off here, it's very bad because they have already taken lots of steps. And that's how we come to a priority score of 81 out of 100 in total here, which means that it's a quite important feature that we want to build out. And just to look quite quickly into credit card, which is one of the major ones, we can see here that it actually has a priority score of 90, just because the external internal indicators suggest that it's used even more widely than PayPal, because more people have a credit card than a PayPal account, which is actually in line with market data from the European markets, which we're starting out with at least. So this is how we prioritize or rate different suggestions and different hypotheses, and we can then prioritize what are we going to build first, what are we going to build next, and what are we probably not going to build. And that's how those features then progress through this board as well. So you should be under the announced one, you should see here pay with PayPal as well as pay with credit card. So that's something that we're currently building now and releasing soon. So that's how a little bit of a live view into our process of how we're doing this.
Thank you, Helmut. Really, really insightful, and thanks for taking us through the sort of behind the scenes element there as well. And Matthew was asking in the chat, thanks for your question, Matthew, sort of what's the master list of what's going to be delivered and where can I see this? It's important to say that what you see in product view is going to tell you an indication of, yeah, this is really high priority, it's being built. It's not going to give you a precise launch date, because one of the facets of the agile planning system is that we plan each sprint immediately prior to the start of that sprint. So although we have an idea of what's shaping up in the next sprint, we don't lock that in until literally the day before we actually start the sprint. And that's what gives us our agility. That's what meant that when we had a COVID lockdown at the beginning of this year and all of our chosen work was suddenly no longer required, we just literally finished the last 2 days worth of work and then immediately switched the whole team to working on the next piece of work, which was not related to chosen. So it's hugely beneficial, especially in our current times. But it does mean that we don't have certainty about dates until immediately before we have an indication of what's coming. Also worth pointing out that you touched on this in your demo, Helmut. There was an element there where you looked at sort of what's the external indicator, what's the internal indicator, and then you said what's the value. And I think this is something where actually we need to leave our egos behind a little bit and just learn to be a little bit humble about this, because very often we find that there's something that really bugs us and we really want to get it done and we really want to see it done in a particular way. But when we look at the data, we can see that actually that really isn't proving to be an issue for people, and therefore the added value to the platform of doing that piece of work might not be as high as the value to us personally. And that's why we have a team approach to this, and that's why we ask for your feedback. Is we're trying to get a balanced view of what the value is across our whole constituency of supporters, rather than what one particular person or particular expert thinks. We need to absolutely hear that loud and clear, but also back it up with data and make sure that that's actually a kind of a wider need. And it leads us into one of our next questions as well, which is coming. And do, by the way, if you have any additional questions, do post them in. I can see everybody listening intently rather than posting new questions, but I'm glad that this is useful to you. If there's anything else you want to hear, do let us know in the chat. But one of the questions I've heard quite a few times recently, as we've all started to get into FY21 planning, is sort of, I've heard a rumour that country X isn't going live on United 4 for 2 quarters or 4 quarters. Why isn't that? Is there a problem with the platform? And if you cast your mind back to what we were just saying around sort of building things in a particular order, and remember that actually United is being built from the ground up as a new piece of technology, then there are some sites, some existing supporter office sites which are more advanced than United will be when it launches. And United has some serious catching up to do. United 4 has some serious catching up to do before it's able to offer the full gamut of experiences that some supporter support offices are already offering. So in the UK, for example, where I spend some of my time, we have a very advanced website. It does a whole lot of things, and we can't fully switch to United in cohort 1 because it doesn't provide something like the sponsorship portal in that version. That will come later in the financial year. We are going live with part of United 4, and that's actually a real opportunity for us, because the content element and the acquisition, supporter acquisition element is an area where we need to grow our strength really strongly, and we can do that whilst retaining our existing sponsor portal. Other support offices are looking at that, going, actually splitting that is really hard, and we'd rather actually just wait till United 4 catches up. And so large offices like Germany, for example, there's a lot of customizations, a lot of very specific features that have to be in place in order to work in that way, won't be able to join the platform, won't be ready for them for several cohorts moving ahead. So what we are looking to do is to work with support offices and figure out when is right for you to join the platform. And part of the purpose of these webinars moving forward, once we're into FY21, we're actually able to do live demos each webinar, will be to help people to understand, all right, that's where you've got to, so that kind of looks ready. We're ready to go now, but we're not expecting that everyone joins the queue at the beginning. It would be actually really difficult to move everybody at the same time, and so we're bringing on a mixture of existing United 3 offices and new offices joining the platform for the first time in our first cohort, and we would expect that to continue certainly through the first year. I think it'll be 12 months before we bring across the full gamut of United 3 customers, and so we will continue to maintain United 3 through that period of time, and then decommission it at the end of that period. So don't be concerned that a country that you have a conversation with isn't moving in the first cohort. There, nobody is sort of rushing to move here. We're moving at the right time, and that's absolutely the way that we would like it to be. I see we've got a question in. Stu, thank you for being on the webinar. How do we assess the impact of new web requirements on back-end office systems, e.g. CRM, for example, and how do we make sure that the website developments and the back office systems are aligned? Absolutely vital question, and it's actually one of the ones that I was going to talk about, because we are getting this a lot. I guess another variation on this question is, do I need to change my CRM before I move to United 4? Do I need to be on a Dynamics CRM, for example? And the answer is that we've kept the CRM requirements and the United platform decoupled. So United is being developed in such a way that you don't need to change your existing CRM in order to use United. So what that means in practice for the very first cohort is that we are offering as interfaces to the website the same file transfers and in and out data flows that we are currently generating. So for example, the demo that we just saw of the child data, that child data was actually drawn from a CSV file, and that's the same format, exactly the same format. We've matched it that we're currently using to export data and upload it into United 3. So there's no requirement to change your CRM initially. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that that's the long-term solution, because as we have a more interactive live platform, a marketing platform, and as we have new CRM capabilities coming across the partnership, we want to take advantage of those, and we want to be able to say, okay, you can start by using the same transfers that you're currently using, but pretty quickly it'd be great if we could actually make these things work much more smoothly. So as we go on through FY21, you're very quickly going to see some integration, some live integrations starting to happen, where we're working with colleagues in global IT around Simmer to actually get live integrations up and running between Simmer and United, using what technology is available within Simmer, which obviously has some limitations. but that's really going to accelerate the way that data can flow in and out of those systems and enable similar countries to do some things online which we haven't been able to do before, which is really fantastic. But we're just being sensitive to when a country joins the cohort to make sure that we aren't going to place demands on other parts of their organisation which they may not be prepared to do. So really important that we reflect that. If you look at the long-term picture here, we're taking, I guess, a little bit of a gamble because we haven't decided as a global partnership what's going to be our core CRM platform of choice. We are following some major developments in the US, in Canada, and some upcoming developments in other large offices like myself in the UK, like Australia and New Zealand. And there is a move towards Microsoft Dynamics, but we have to say that's not a decision. We haven't made a decision yet to go to Dynamics. We may end up on Salesforce. We may end up on different CRMs. We need certain capabilities on those CRMs in order to really get the benefits of modern digital marketing, but we can't lock onto that. But what we've done within United 4 is we've said we're going to be using the Microsoft Dynamics platform within United to keep track of all of our supporter data that comes into the platform. So when a supporter registers, or when they make a payment, or when they set up a sponsorship with a particular child, internally we're going to be using Dynamics for that. Now initially you're going to get a file export just like you currently have. There's no need to change current systems, or we're matching current file transfer mechanisms in order to achieve that. But what it does mean is that if we do end up with a Microsoft Dynamics CRM in a particular support office, is we can then say, do you know what, actually the integration between the data we hold on the marketing platform and the data we hold in our CRM, that could just get really good if we want to keep them separate, because you're talking between two market-leading systems. You may even be talking between two dynamic systems. Or it could go even a step further, and we could say, okay, we can talk directly to Dynamics. So rather than talking to a sort of web-only or online-only set of data, why don't we just deliver these data and these experiences from supporters directly into your live CRM? So that's the long-term vision about this. But we're just really conscious that Scott Mills would have a lot to say about this and his team. We've been working with Christopher, working with Vadim to understand the way forward on the organisation-wide CRM offering, how that's going to be supported, how that's working. We're also working really closely with our colleagues across Europe, obviously, with a lot of United 3 customers in Europe, to understand how their development is going. They are already on Microsoft Dynamics in terms of their sort of CRM and ERP platform. That they're moving up to a later version, to a newer version of that, and again that puts them on a converging course. But this is directional at the moment, I think it's fair to say, and as we get further through the detail, we'll then be able to unlock and say, right, okay, we can see that this is where the CRM's going. We can see that this is where United 4 is already using that CRM. Now we can unlock these features. But to answer the original question, to you, Stu, we're expecting to deliver current integrations in the same way that they're delivered at the moment, so that we can minimise the amount of work that has to be done in a support office end. And to answer the sort of more strategic question, do I need to change my CRM in order to use United 4? The answer is no, you don't. But depending on which CRM you're using, that might determine which cohort it makes sense for you to come in on, to make sure that there is an integration ready for you to get your data in and out. So I hope that answers that one. I don't see any more questions coming in, and we are sort of at our 45-minute mark. So I'm going to just see if anything pops in the next few seconds. But otherwise, I think we are largely done for the day. Well done to Helmut for being brave enough to try not just the demo of our platform live, but also linking his mobile into a Zoom call via a YouTube thing. I think that worked really well, and we did get a view of the live platform working, which is fantastic to see, and really good to see that sort of mobile first experience. It's easy to talk about being mobile first, but even I am like, oh, you're showing us a mobile version, what does the desktop version look like? Because I'm of that era. But of course we know that our consumers, our our supporters are using mobile first, and so that's where we need to target. So really, really good to see that live demo. Very much looking forward to being able to hugely expand on that next time we see each other and take you through a big kind of big walkthrough of all the key journeys, show you some of the different types of content that we've got ready for you, show you how some of those vary across the different platforms, show you the automatic language translation, the automatic publishing that we've got all up and running. Really excited to see that. But that will all come next time. Many thanks for your questions and participation today, and do be in touch with us if you're watching this on demand and are sort of have follow-up questions that you want to come back on. We'll try and wrap up those in a later session. If you're not sure where your particular country is in the sort of roadmap and you want to get engaged and sort of figure out, right, where do we want to start thinking about this, it is something that we'll need. It's not just sort of something to say, put your hand up and we'll kind of get you in that quarter. It needs some preparation from our end. It needs some preparation as well at the country end. So do get in touch if you're not in touch already with Ria and the team around understanding what might be the right time to come on board, and also what features are likely to be there by then, as we've been talking about the roadmap side of things. So I encourage you to be in touch on that. Really looking forward to being able to show some of those core functionalities to you next time, and really getting our heads around the launch schedule as well. So that will be, hopefully you can join us on the 29th of October for what we hope will be a special launch edition. We'll probably do a slightly longer webinar because this is a big platform, there's a lot to show, and I think we'll probably have some questions too. And what I would like to do is to bring in some of the other folks who have been involved in putting this together. So some of our editors, some of our marketers who have really helped us to make that side of things really come to life. So we'll send out a placeholder invite to that with the month-end update email, which will come out in a few days. So keep an eye out to that, and enjoy yourselves. I hope I'll see some of you at least on the Day of Prayer next week. We're a week out from starting on our new year, for a very challenging year ahead for World Vision. But in the meantime, I'll just say a very warm thank you to Helmut. It's been a brilliant demo from your end. A very, very great thank you to everyone on the call and for your pleasant comments there and great questions, and very much looking forward to catching up with you at the end of October. Till then.